here today with Stuart Trinkle and Marsha Combs, and they are former members of the Junior League of Roanoke Valley and former board members. And the Junior League was one of the three founders of the Ronald McDonald House of Southwest Virginia. I just wanted to start out with in the Junior League's news release from July 14th, 1982, then President Betty Lesko was quoted saying, "The Ronald McDonald House is the largest project the League has undertaken in its 57-year history." So how does a conversation like that start?
Gosh, we were just talking a little while ago about that, and I honestly cannot remember the exact beginning of the first conversation. I do know that Cindy Smith, who you'll be chatting with at a later date, if I'm not mistaken, had done the research and first heard of the Ronald McDonald houses. And, what I do remember is, the League had contacted, that was when Ham Flanagan was president of, was it Roanoke Memorial Roanoke Hospital Association, and with probably Mike Grimm and some of the other McDonald's owners back then. But it was, conversations and, is there anything else that, it was so long ago, I more remember as it got started, and we took it was the Roanoke Memorial plane, actually, and flew to Richmond and Norfolk one day to look at their houses. So there was a lot of research that went on. And Betty's quote was 2 years before it actually opened, so that was way in the beginning. Small world, I ran into Betty in the parking lot of Kroger at the lake yesterday and said, "Betty, can you believe it's been 35 years? And she was shocked, and the comment she made was so true. She said, "Wasn't it wonderful being part of something that changed so many lives?" And it really is.
That's right. I came on board early in the process, but there had been some groundwork laid before I was involved. And at the point that I was involved, they had already communicated with Roanoke Memorial Hospital and McDonald's. And of course, there was a lot of coordination between the League and those two organizations that had to be done to even get the idea off the ground. So it was a very big undertaking for the Junior League at that time. And as well as I can recall, I think the League committed $50,000 to the project, which was huge in that day. So all these things were done early on, and as far as being representatives from the League, we had to get approval from the League to even begin working on the Ronald McDonald House project.
Okay, so what does that process look like when you say you get approval from the League?
Yes.
So how did that?
The membership had to vote. And we actually had a special meeting. The League doesn't ordinarily meet in the summertime, and for this particular vote, there was a communication sent out to all the members, and there was a specially called meeting in the summertime for the membership to gather and to hear the presentation about the Ronald McDonald House, and then to vote. And the vote was taken, and it was unanimously approved, which was a huge deal.
So what were some of the first steps the Junior League took, and what were your individual roles? Okay, it's been approved, and then what happened after that?
I think, and I forget what my title was, but I was overseeing the community projects. And as I mentioned before, we, a group of us, and I can't remember if anybody from McDonald's was there or not, when we flew to Richmond and Norfolk, both of those houses, I remember the one more in Richmond, was an older house, and that's the way it started in Boston with the very first Ronald McDonald House, were older houses where folks had, group bathrooms and individual just sort of bedrooms and a group kitchen, fairly small. So this was going to be, if I'm not mistaken, the first new building, new house built just to be a Ronald McDonald House. If I'm not mistaken, 'cause I think we were maybe the 16th house. I can't remember exactly, but we were pretty early on. But at the time, it was the largest, newest house that had been built. So there was a lot of controversy in the neighborhood. Do you remember some of
Oh,
those?
it was huge. It was a big issue, and we went door to door in the neighborhood here surrounding the house to distribute information about the proposed Ronald McDonald House. There was concern from the neighbors, some of the neighbors, that this was encroaching into their area, that this was another project from the hospital that might be encroaching a little bit. So we had opposition, and the opposition was pretty vocal. But by and large, the support was there in the neighborhood, even though there was some resistance. And so it worked out, and we did have some struggle with that issue, but in the end, it came together.
I think there's an old abandoned four-square house that had been sitting here for years, abandoned. And so the original carriage house is still there. But, so that was the house that was torn down. But yeah, they were, worried about, lots of people coming through the neighborhood that they wouldn't know. And so, but it's worked out.
And we had to go and make a presentation to city council to get approval too. I remember going to that meeting and hearing a lot of comments made by both sides. But that was an interesting aspect to the whole process too.
It was.
Well, that's huge because this house wasn't it built to blend into the neighborhood?
Yes.
So,
And it still amazes me, as many years as I've lived in the neighborhood, is how many people go by this house every day, going and coming to work, and don't realize that we're here. That it just looks like a large Tudor mansion that's sitting on the corner, and they did a great job.
It fits right in.
It does.
Yes.
It does.
Yeah. So, the zoning issue was resolved, you were cleared, and now the project starts. What were some of the other challenges that you faced in building a house of this magnitude along the way?
Some of the challenges, honestly, were working with the hospital and with McDonald's to sort of stake out our territory, shall we say. We had to define what the league responsibilities were, what role McDonald's was going to take, and of course the hospital. And they had significant financial contributions to this project, much more so than the league. But there was some controversy about how we all fit together. But by and large, when the league went back to our basic function, which is to provide trained volunteers in the community, when we zeroed in on that, that became what our role would be. And for, I don't know how long really, but initially anyway, a lot of the people, a lot of the staff was comprised of volunteers. And they were from the junior league. They were active league members.
Oh, that was a placement, for
Yes.
years and years. I remember that. Yeah, there were some strong personalities, and those who knew Ham Flanagan. I mean, Mr. Flanagan, he was a great man, but he was used to having his own way, and there were some strong personalities with the McDonald's side as well. Probably, I think when you were talking about challenges and where we came into play, at the original, at all the former Ronald McDonald houses, there were no televisions in the bedrooms. And the purpose being they wanted people to come out, cook meals together and do. And again, we were so different because it was more of a hotel setup with, 18 bedrooms. And Mr. Flanagan wanted televisions in the bedrooms because people sort of expected that. McDonald's is, the Ronald McDonald houses are home away from home for the families of seriously ill children. And Mr. Flanagan felt fairly strongly, we've got 18 bedrooms. It made no sense if we had 10 empty bedrooms of having them stay empty when there is still a great need for this, of the families of adults being treated in the hospitals. And it is expensive, and it was back then too, to find hotel rooms. And that was, I can still clearly remember that last board meeting. I mean, the house was finished and we were just about to open. And McDonald's in the hospital reached an impasse that McDonald's was saying, no, you cannot have families of adult, of patients staying there. And we sort of gotten past the TV thing. I think Mr. Flanagan won that round. They said, okay. And I can still remember, I can't remember who, whether it was McDonald's or the hospital, somebody saying, well, I guess there won't be a Ronald McDonald house then. And there was just this dead silence. And finally I can remember, I was young, taking sort of a deep breath and saying, we cannot walk away from here now. We cannot walk away. We have to figure this out. And they did. At that point then, they agreed, McDonald's did, but it was very clear to the family staying here that if a family of a seriously ill child comes in, they would have to move. And I think y'all did that for probably about 10 years, and then it became very difficult having to tell families that, I'm sorry, you're going to have to leave. And that was the true purpose to begin with anyway. So it's been probably, 10 or 15 years that it is just the families of children at this point. But that was, I can still remember that. Oh my gosh.
Well, I can remember it well too, because I was scheduled to make a presentation at a program at my church about the Ronald McDonald House. And at that point, things were so iffy about whether or not we indeed would get the house that I didn't feel like it would be an honest thing for me to get up in front of my church to talk about it. And I backed out at the last minute to give that presentation. I felt terrible about that, but I couldn't get up in good faith and act like there was no problem about it. So,
but it worked itself out.
Yeah, it was, yes, it did work out, thank goodness.
Thank goodness for
the junior leaguers who kind of smoothed things over and found the compromise, and
I feel like you all are the original Me Too movement, actually. Yeah. So there were those moments of doubt that, this may not happen.
Yes.
Okay. Well, looking at some of the figures, we estimate that over 20,000 children and their families have been served by the Ronald McDonald House. 255,500,000 individual meals served, and approximately $16 million saving families in hotel costs. So, what does it feel like 35 years later to know that you were a part of this?
It's very satisfying, because I feel like the house is one of the best things about Roanoke. I think we can be very proud of it, proud of the fact that we care enough to provide that. And certainly people that are in a position that many of the families are in are under a tremendous amount of stress. And to be able to give them a wonderful place to stay during this particular time in their lives is just huge.